Hey everyone, and welcome. So, have you ever found yourself just tangled in this web of UI logic? We've all been there. Today, we're going to unravel one of React's most powerful and sometimes most confusing concepts, state management. And I promise by the end of this, you'll be able to turn all that chaos into code that's crystal clear and totally predictable. You know the feeling, right? You're juggling all these Boolean variables: is loading, is error, is success, just trying to control what the user sees on the screen. If that sounds familiar, well, you are definitely in the right place. It's such a classic recipe for creating fragile code that's just an absolute nightmare to debug. Okay, so what's at the heart of this whole problem? It really boils down to two totally different ways of thinking about building UIs. There's the imperative way, telling the computer how to do something, and then there's the declarative way, telling it what you want. Honestly, understanding this one distinction is the key to unlocking way cleaner and much more robust React components. All right, let's really dive into this because it's super important. On the left, you've got the imperative approach. Think of it like giving your computer super specific turn-by-turn directions. You're saying, okay, first, find this button. Now, disable it. Next, show this spinner. It's very step-by-step. But the declarative approach, and this is what React is all about, is completely different. It's like showing the computer a picture of your final destination. You just say, hey, when we're in a loading state, the UI should look exactly like this. And you let React figure out all the little steps to get there. Big difference, right? So in that old school imperative world, you are manually managing every single piece of the UI. You have to track every single change yourself. And what happens if you miss a step? Or you get the order wrong? Yep, you've got a bug. It's just a guaranteed recipe for complexity and headaches. So the big question is, how does React save us from this absolute mess? Well, it completely flips the script. It gets us to focus on one central idea, and that idea is called state. So what is state? You can think of it as the memory of your component. It is the single source of truth that decides everything the user sees. It's the boss. And here's the magic part. You don't tell the component how to change. No, you just change its state, and poof, React automatically updates the UI to match that new state. It really is that simple. Okay, but what's really, really cool about this is the mental shift it forces you to make. This is a game changer. You have to stop thinking about a timeline of events, like first this happens, then that happens. Instead, I want you to start thinking like a UI designer. Visualize every possible screen or snapshot that your component can ever be in. Let's make this concrete. Take a simple contact form. It's not just one static thing, is it? No way. It has a bunch of different, distinct visual states. You've got the state where the user is just typing into the fields. Then there's the submitting state, maybe with a spinner. Then, hopefully, you get a success state with a nice message. And of course, there's the error state if something goes wrong. Every single one of these is a unique snapshot of the UI, and our job is to model them in our code. Okay, so thinking in states is great in theory, but how do we actually organize this stuff in our code? Don't worry, I've got you covered. Here is a simple 4-step playbook you can use every single time to design really robust and clean component state. So here are the 4 steps. First, you identify the pieces that change together. Then you eliminate any impossible states. We'll talk a lot more about that. Third, you model it with the right data structure. And finally, you refactor your logic. The whole point here is to take a scattered mess of variables and just boil them down into one single clean state model. Trust me, this is what's going to make your code so much more predictable and bug resistant. So let's see how it's done. All right, now for the fun part. Let's get our hands dirty. We're going to take a really common, kind of messy approach to state and then use our playbook to clean it all up. So a super common first attempt, and hey, we've all done this, is to just create a Boolean flag for every possible condition. You know, we'll have one for is typing, one for is submitting, another for is success, and is error. It seems illogical at first glance, right? But believe me, there is a hidden danger lurking inside this approach. And boom, here's the problem. When you have all these separate flags, your component can get into states that make zero sense in the real world. Think about it. Can a form be actively submitting and showing an error message at the exact same time? Of course not. That's what we call an impossible state, and it is a massive, massive source of bugs in our applications. So the most crucial point, the big takeaway, is this. Your state structure should physically prevent you from ever getting into a situation that doesn't make sense to the user. Let me say that again. A good state design makes impossible states impossible. That's the goal. And look at this. This is the solution right here. It's so elegant. Instead of juggling 4 different messy booleans, we consolidate everything into one single status variable. Now, it can be typing, or it can be submitting, or success, but it can never be more than one of those at the same time. In one simple move, we have made all of those contradictory, impossible states literally impossible to represent in our code. This is huge. And the result of this? Well, now your component can only be in one valid state at any given time. This makes your code so much more predictable. If you want to know what the UI is doing, you just have to look at one single variable, status. And guess what? Debugging becomes an absolute breeze. Okay, so using useState with a single status string like this is fantastic for simple components. It's a great pattern. But what happens when your state logic starts to get a bit more complex? When you have many different actions that can all change the state in different ways. Well, that's when it's time to bring in a more powerful tool, useReducer. Honestly, the best way to think about useReducer is like useState, but on steroids. useState is perfect for simple stuff, numbers, strings, booleans. But useReducer really shines when your state gets more complex, like with objects or arrays, and especially when you have a whole bunch of different ways to update that state. The real magic is that it lets you gather up all of that scattered update logic into one single, central, and totally predictable place. The biggest benefit here is that it helps you organize your code. Instead of having your state update logic scattered all over the place inside a dozen different event handlers, useReducer lets you pull all of that logic into a single function called a reducer. So your component just says, hey, something happened. Here's an action, like add item. It just dispatches that action, and the reducer function takes care of all the heavy lifting. It's so much cleaner. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you're building a React component or even looking at an old one, just pause for a second and ask yourself this question. Is my component state as simple and robust as it could possibly be? By really thinking declaratively, by carefully modeling out your states to avoid those impossible situations, and by choosing the right tool for the job, whether it's useState or useReducer, you can build UIs that aren't just powerful, but are also predictable and honestly a real joy to work with and maintain.